late, so. Cool.
So
The neighbor.
I'll have to catch him when he gets back. Yeah, I gave him the wrong one first, so he's. So he converted the document that it didn't really matter, and now he needs to get through that one done.
So the speaker will be picked up.
We'll just give it another minute or so. Trying to mute everybody as they come in. I'll give it like 30 more seconds and then we'll get started. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Thank you everyone so much for being here and congratulations. We made it. It was a long road, but we're super excited to continue working with all of you and we're really happy to kick this program off. So we'll start off with some brief introductions. I'm Grace. I'm sure that I've emailed or chatted on the phone with all of you at this point. I am the agriculture program specialist. My personal work email and work cell phone number are listed here, as well as Chad's. He'll introduce himself in just a moment. We are both we both administer and receive emails from the DATCAP RFSI inbox. So please continue to direct all emails to that inbox. Either he or I will reply to you, but in case you ever need to reach out to either of us specifically, you have our contact information here. And then Chad can go ahead and introduce himself.
Hey everyone, this is Chad from Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection. I am your RFSI grant specialist. I work hand in hand with Grace here in monitoring the emails there. My role is more specifically towards the reimbursements and the contracting phase. Me and they'll are replied as the grants team there from the RFSI inbox, but also I have my personal email, my personal work email provided here along with my phone number, just in case you would like to reach me. And then also sitting next to me here is our financial specialist for the Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection's RFSI program. She will be overseeing the internal side of transferring funds to your accounts there when reimbursements are submitted through finance.
Hi, that would be me, Chris Smith. I am the accountant. As Chad said, I'll be assisting with the reimbursements. We've also done the requisitions and the purchase orders should be forthcoming to support the contracts. So you should be seeing those in the near future if you haven't already. Any questions in regards to your finances, please continue to direct them, as Grace and Chad said, to the RFSI email box, and any questions to their phone numbers. They'll work with me directly on any questions and vice versa. So congratulations again, and thanks. Nice to meet you all.
Sweet. Okay, so just a bit of funding background for your knowledge as you share your projects with your family and friends and promote the program and talk about it with people in your communities. The RFSI program is a $420 million USDA program. It's funding that comes out of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, or ARPA. So it was a congressional act born out of COVID relief efforts. And the $420 million was divided and allocated to all 56 US states and territories. So there's a program just like ours going on in every state and territory across the country. Wisconsin, though, was allocated the second highest funding amount behind only California. The funding formula used to determine each state's percent share of the total allocation considered the weighted sum of the state's percent share of commodities by sales, the state's percent share of commodity by small farm sales, and the state's percent share of rural populations living in distressed communities. So just a bit of background information for you as you move forward with this program. And then as you're aware, this program offers two grant types, the equipment only, which you are the recipients of, and the infrastructure grants, which range up to $3 million in federal funding awards. Those we are still in the process of finalizing the review process and the official award press release and things. So those have not yet been officially announced, but you can expect to see that coming soon. And then as a reminder, the purpose of the Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Program is to build resilience in the middle of the food supply chain, to provide more and better markets to small farms and food businesses, to support the development of value-added products for consumers, fair prices, fair wages, and new and safe job opportunities. And this cool graphic, I think, is kudos to someone in Oklahoma's RFSI program. So today we are going to do a brief overview of all of you who were awarded through this program. We're going to talk about the reimbursement process and how that's going to work, the progress reporting process, and then just a few random housekeeping grant management items. We'll take a quick tour of the website, go through a couple of the documents, and then at the end there'll be time for questions, but feel free to raise your virtual hand if there are any specific questions that you have about things that we're discussing. Otherwise, there will be a chance at the end. So who are you? We had 235 applications come in for the program. You all requested a total of about $165 million. We had 117 infrastructure grant applicants requesting $155 million, and then 118 folks requesting equipment only funds for a little over $9 million. We have 31 proposals in process to hopefully award infrastructure grants to, and then there are 41 of you. There was an average request of $78,102 for this program. So I'll just go ahead and read each of your names. I hope I say everything correctly, but just a chance to shout everybody out. We have congratulations in order for Blue Roof Orchard, Fromage Spa, Kid Farm Transport, Clemish Creamery, Silver Moon Springs, Small Family Farm, Ecker's Apple Farm, White Oak Farm, Full Circle Community Farm, Three Sisters Community Farm, Driftless Organics, The Cider Farm, Northeast Wisconsin Hmong Professionals, Three Brothers Farm, Perfection Produce, Authentic Local Foods, Cedar Grove Cheese, Sullivan Family Farm, Keewaydon Farms, Bellbrook Berry Farm, Stock Family Farm, Sokagon Chippewa Community, Shalomba Farm, the School District of New Richmond, the Nutrition Department, Wafer Food Pantry, Heartland Craft Grains, Adams Heirlooms, Vine and Virtue Farm, Good Thunder Farm, St. Francis Hermitage, Pasture and Plenty, Over East, Bad River Food Sovereignty, Alpenage Cheese, Cultivating the Commons, Sipple's Sap Shack, Schmidt Century Farm, Hermit Creek Farm, The Brick Ministries, Mushrooms Reach, and Seisha Enterprises. So congratulations again. We have enjoyed working with you so far and look forward to continuing to do so. So what are your projects? They are expanding markets for Wisconsin producers and products. They demonstrated local support. They address compelling middle of the food supply chain issues, problems, and needs. They adhere to the program guidelines set forth by the federal grant rules, the USDA, and DACAP. They are clearly articulated and cohesive projects. They support underserved communities and producers, and they build system resilience overall. And then here's a map denoting where all of you are. You're the blue dots. And then the green dots are our anticipated infrastructure project locations. And then I'll turn it over to Chad and he'll go into the nitty-gritty of how you will receive this funding.
Hello again, everybody. So we're just going to go over the reimbursement request process. So to start, we're going to go into the next slide here and look what reimbursement request is as terms of an overview. So when we think of a request for reimbursement, it should be pieces of information that are woven the supporting material and the cover letter and detail sheet, allowing for an outside party to connect the expenses to the grant and verify their existence. And here provided, we just came up with a quick diagram there to help your entities there think of reimbursements there as this interconnected pieces. And to start, we have the foundation, which is the expense program eligible. The way we determine if an expense is program eligible is through our ability to connect the expenses your entity is requesting to the grant, and the material provided as eligible was determined through our review process when it was reviewed initially by our reviewer committee, reviewed by us, and then reviewed by USDA, as you are all well familiar with. So after that, we have, is it budgeted in your contract? So what we do is that we compare what that expense is to what we have agreed upon in our contract there in terms of how that relates to the overall work plan that was outlined. After that, we have items like invoices as well. So do you have an itemized receipt or invoice? What this allows us to do is discern the items that have been purchased under your reimbursement and connect directly to the grant. And proof of payment. So do you have a proof of payment in your reimbursement package there? What this does is it outlines that there was funds that left your entity and that we have funds that we will have to reimburse your entity for underneath the grant project. Now, the final question is the information accurate and complete? So what that refers to mostly is when we look at reimbursement cover letter and the material submitted, we must ensure that the items, totals, dates must correlate with one another. And to ensure each piece is intertwined, supporting your claim for that reimbursement. Following that, we have the actual reimbursement request materials. So what we would need from your entity there is a complete cover sheet, and the complete cover sheet comes with a detail sheet that is connected with a lower tab there to that Excel piece. And then following that, we will need itemized receipts and invoices there and proof of payment as your supplementary material. An itemized receipt counts as a proof of payment. And what we mean by an itemized receipt there is for like smaller purchases, mostly for small items that can be purchased with like a credit card. That would be sufficient, barring that there's no issues with the supporting material. And then other forms of proof of payment, like the QuickBooks ledger, endorsed checks, bank statements, bill of lading, proof of a wire transfer. All of these would provide your entity, provide us enough information that your entity transferred funds. I would say that the gold standard is a screenshot of a scanned bank statement there saying X amount of funds have left your entity. That's very helpful for us to discern that there were funds that left. Next slide.
Just to add to that, we need to be able to connect the item that was purchased, how much it cost to purchase that item, and then the fact that you have already purchased the item by providing proof of payment in one of the ways that Chad just outlined.
Oh, thank you, Grace. And then process details, when sending scans or screenshots of supporting material, provide them as separate individual files sent as attachments to our DATCAP RFSI email. Recommendation is to organize them into a folder on your computer and then send them over as a zip file as the attachment. Be on the lookout for follow-up questions from the RFSI team after submitting your reimbursement requests. So one thing that we do here at the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection is that we want to verify that our stakeholders, including the Legislative Auditing Bureau, have enough supporting material to show that these expenses did occur there when we eventually become audited on a yearly basis for this program. So these are just to ensure that these expenses have taken place. Following that, the more organized, the quicker turnaround. Reimbursements take typically about 30 days or less, and this is dependent on how organized these pieces are. The clearer the expense and payment information and the more organized the documentation, the faster your reimbursement will be processed. Following that, we have included a reimbursement guide in the zip file or the zip folder that we send to your entity once we have a fully executed contract. Along with that, we're going to upload reimbursement tutorials on our website here shortly that outline the process of filling out a reimbursement cover sheet with detail sheet attached. We've also included in those zip folders a RFSI grant management tool to allow your entity to track expenses and the expenditures and reimbursements and project outcomes there of your particular project.
And all of those items are on our website, which we'll show you in just a bit. The reimbursement guide is just some background information to use if you have questions, specific questions. As with the tutorials, the grant management tool is optional. It's just something that Chad developed because he wanted a file that you would be able to keep all of your reimbursement progress, your project reporting progress, project reporting, outcome tracking. So that's an optional tool for you to use if you would find that helpful, and that'll be on the website as well. So then the next piece that we're going to go over is the performance reporting component of this grant. When we use the term performance reporting, it's an umbrella term that includes two different types of reports, both the progress report and the final report. The final report template is currently in development, so that has not been made available yet, but it will be made available soon. So we're going to be talking about the progress report today. And equipment-only projects have 3 reports required. The first is on June 15th, 2025, second on December 15th, 2025, and the final report is due by June 15th, 2026. And this is regardless of when all of your items have been purchased, and all 3 reports must be submitted before your contract will be considered fully closed out. So we have amended DATCAP's previous grant policy for this program to allow for your full reimbursement to take place and be processed prior to receiving your final report. So just because we haven't received your final report doesn't mean that you won't be paid in full for all of the equipment that you have purchased. But it's just important to both us and, more accurately, USDA, that they get some information about the outcomes of your different purchases, what you're using them for, and if they're being used for the intended purpose that the funds were applied for. So there's 6 month, approximately 6 month reporting periods. So the report that's due on June 15th, you'll be reporting on all activities between now and May 15th. And you can get that to us anytime between May 15th and June 15th. And then similarly, May 16th to November 15th, that report would be due a month after on December 15th, etc. And progress reporting is about more than simply letting us know that you've purchased a piece of equipment. The program is designed to yield positive outcomes in development in Wisconsin's food supply chain, and we want to know how your equipment purchases are working towards program goals and ensure that the equipment is being used for the purposes that it's intended. So the purposes of a semi-annual progress report include communicating the progress made to the completion of the RFSI project to us at DACAP, identifying areas that DACAP can further support you, evaluating and reflecting on past and future project successes, challenges, expenditures, and impacts, preparing information for the final performance report, and then sharing qualitative and quantitative data on the Wisconsin RFSI program to be reported to USDA AMS, because we also have a reporting requirement and we'll use the information provided in your reports to complete our report. So then I'm going to share my screen and just walk through this document quickly so that when you open it on your own computer, it's not the very first time that you'll be seeing it. Jad, can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. So this is the progress report template. This can be found on the website, and we'll also probably email it to you at some point so that you can have it saved on your computer. Again, it reiterates the purposes of this reporting process, the purpose of the program. Here you'll enter in just some basic information about your organization and your primary point of contact that's listed on your contract. You'll select this equipment only box here. You'll enter in the period of performance and the date that the report is submitted. And then you'll just go through and enter in all of the information that's applicable to an equipment only grant, because this is the template for both infrastructure and equipment only. But as your awards are a bit simpler, there's some information that can be bypassed. So estimating the total percentage of work completed on the project. For example, if you have 3 pieces of equipment that you applied for and you've purchased 1, you would estimate about 33% here. Again, it's just an estimate to let us know how much of the expenditures have already been incurred and how much is left to be done. Then a brief overview of activities, accomplishments, challenges, and progress conducted for the period of performance. Again, this is more than just simply we purchased the truck. It's that you've hired a driver or you've trained employees to use the truck, and you've set up some new delivery routes, whatever the activities are that are associated with the piece of equipment as listed in your application and now your contract. Just a brief overview of what's been done thus far. Similarly, you'll list some different accomplishments or activities for that period of performance. Any deviations from your work plan. So if there's a piece of equipment that you had planned to purchase by now, but there's a significant lead time or some supply chain issue of some kind, you would talk about that. And maybe if there's been a corrective action or an alteration to the project, you would detail that in this box as well. And then this is the same chart that you'll remember from your application. And we include this in here because these are numbers that we'll have to report on to the USDA. So you'll go ahead and put the numbers from your contract in this expected numbers category, and then the actual numbers to date. So the cumulative number of new and improved pieces of equipment. And again, this will look a little bit different because this is the full chart from the infrastructure application. Yours will be simplified because it's just pieces of equipment that you're purchasing. So you'll only fill in what's applicable here. Similarly to the increasing economic viability section. Any additional information? This is an optional section to discuss anything else that's going on. Here you'll talk about your expenditures to date. Again, the only columns and rows that you'll be filling out are the ones that relate to equipment. So you don't have any matching contributions, so you'll leave this blank, but you'll fill out how much you were approved for and then how much you have been reimbursed to date. Any upcoming activities you'll talk about here, plans to spend the rest of the grant funding, and then any optional feedback that you have for us at DACAP. If there's anything that would be helpful in accomplishing your goals that we can do, we would love to hear about that. We do read all of these, and again, we use this information to complete our own reporting. So it does not go into a file that no one will ever read. We'll get back to the presentation. Can you see that? Awesome. Okay. This is our final section. This is just some random housekeeping bits. First, there is a resource that we created because this is a reimbursement-based grant, as are all DATCP grants. This is not unique to just RFSI. It means that awarded organizations will need to cash flow purchases up front prior to receiving grant funds. So we understand that this will be difficult or even impossible without some access to loans or other financing options, which is why this document was created. It's kind of a directory of Wisconsin-based community development financial institutions, or CDFIs, and then other institutions that specifically provide sources of capital, bridge loan financing to particular demographic groups and businesses and organization structures that may have a more difficult time securing loans outside of these types of specific loan programs. So on the document, which you'll find on our website, and I'll show you where that is, there's a list of these different places, and then it kind of goes into who their programs are intended for, what kinds of purchases the loans support. So I'm hopeful that this will be a useful tool for anyone that might need it. And then I'll share my screen again because we'll just take a quick look at the website. So this is the website that you've all been to because it's where we house the application materials. But it's updated with some information about your awards. You'll be able to find yourself on this grant recipient list. It includes the most recent press release announcing your awards. And then we've also added some of the resources that we've already talked about today. For example, the progress reporting template that we just went through, the reimbursement cover sheet that Chad was talking about, the reimbursement guide that Chad created to go into more detail about the reimbursement process, and then this financing resources document, which I just mentioned. Our contact information is here, and then all other additional resources. We'll continue to update this. This Small Business Development Center Financial Projections online course was a link that was added recently. I would highly recommend checking it out. And if you have any questions about any of these things, as always, don't hesitate to reach out to us. But we'll let you know if anything important changes with the website, but continue to monitor it so that you can stay up to date on any resources or documents that have been posted. And I'm going to have to present this again. Okay, so I'm sure that every single one of you read every word of your contract, but just in case you didn't, there were a few things that I wanted to highlight, some particular provisions or contract terms that may be more applicable to this grant in practice than others, potentially. First, it's the subrecipient's responsibility to notify the DATCP RFSI inbox of any changes to your primary contact. The primary contact email is who will send all program emails to, and that's who we have on file if we need to get in touch with you for any reason. So if that ever changes, please let us know as soon as possible so that emails and communications aren't getting lost. Secondly, there are federal grant rules that dictate requirements on how to properly manage and dispose, which means to sell or otherwise get rid of equipment that was purchased with federal funding. So we haven't even purchased the pieces of equipment yet, so we're not near the point of having to dispose of them, but It will happen eventually, and it would be your responsibility to reach out to DACCAP to see if there's anything that you would need to do special before you get rid of that equipment, because in some cases there is. So that's kind of a case-by-case basis. There are federal grant rules that you can read up on, or you can just email us and we can help you figure it out. It's a subrecipient responsibility to provide insurance coverage for the equipment purchased with grant funds. Subrecipient responsibility to retain all data and records relating to the grant award agreement for 3 years after the submission of the final report. And then further, records for equipment acquired with the support of federal funds must be retained for 3 years after the equipment's final disposition. Subrecipient obligation to provide grant performance data, reports, and project surveys as requested by DACCAP beyond the completion of the contract. DACCAP reserves the right to conduct site visits and monitor projects. Reimbursement payments will be suspended if performance reports are not submitted on time, and or the grantee cannot provide evidence of performance of contracted activities. Sherry, I'll get through my list and then you can go off mute. If an entity receives federal funds totaling more than $750,000 from all sources, not just an RFSI award, you will need to comply with an audit. So that would be if you have different federal awards with a total award amount of over $750,000. And then finally, this contract amendments piece, it's stated in your contract that the contract itself cannot be amended to change the scope of your project or otherwise change the nature of the equipment that's being purchased. However, we understand that these applications were submitted 10 months ago now in some cases. Okay, that's not true. They were due in March, so 8 months or whatever. So things may have changed. Vendors may no longer have the piece of equipment specifically that you applied for available. So please communicate those changes with us and we'll work with you to still fund equipment that similarly completes activities that were included in your original application. I think that's all I had to say about that. Okay, Sherry, go ahead. Oh, do I have to say you have mute?
You might have to.
I don't know how to do that. 1 second, Sherry.
So the
Where do I have to click?
So the three, click on the picture, the three buttons, the three, that's it.
It says disable mic, disable camera. Huh.
Oh, Jerry says she can. put it
Oh.
in the chat.
Okay. Sorry, Sherry. I will.
We'll
Oh, wait.
figure it out.
Shoot.
Yeah. Table mic and
Do I have to hit disable mic?
is that how you select? Is that? how
Oh,
you
wait.
select
No, now her mic is disabled.
it?
Allow mic. But it's still muted. I'm so sorry.
Is it because you're in presentation mode?
Oh,
Can
maybe
you
if I-
hear me?
Yes, I can.
So I just clicked on the mic sign that was on the top right of my computer, on the on the screen, and it unmuted my mic. I did it for myself.
Oh, great. Sherry, do you see that button up at the top?
Oh, thank you. I feel
Okay,
so
great.
silly. Okay.
No worries.
Well, I put it in the chat, but I'm just a couple of questions. One is the record retention. You mentioned, for one thing, like what kind of content are you looking for? And then also you said 3 years after final disposition. What does that refer to? The grant or something else?
So equipment disposition is when a piece of equipment has become too depreciated to use.
Okay.
And so it needs to be disposed of in some way. if it's sold down the road. And the general rule is that it can be sold without having any obligation to either us or the federal government if it's depreciated to a value of less than $5,000.
Okay.
If you're intending to sell the piece of equipment and it is not depreciated below the threshold of $5,000, then you would owe some percentage of the sale to USDA AMS.
Okay.
And so equipment disposition is getting rid of the piece of equipment in one of several ways. And so that federal grant rule is related to the purchase agreements and other documents that you have in relation to the piece of equipment. You're required to keep that documentation for 3 years beyond getting rid of that piece of equipment.
Okay,
And then
so
go ahead.
go ahead.
I was just going to speak to the other types of records.
Okay.
That would be things like, Chad? Sorry, I'm asking. What is it like? Oh,
No, you're good. You're good. No, I unmuted. Anyway, no, other types of records like financial pieces too. There, we're going for reimbursement. There, it's just handy to have like in terms of like the invoice that you used for that purchase. There, proof of payment that you sent over to us as well. Other documentation there, like Grace was saying, with regards to how you're tracking the progress of your grant as well. Those kind of pieces there.
so
Okay.
anything that's related to this grant program, progress reports, receipts, things like that.
Okay. All right, not
Oh.
necessarily like how it was used, or it's really just the selling or transferring it or something like that we would have to.
Yeah, I believe it's like legal documentation, like things, not like informal notes of recording what the equipment was used for on a day-to-day basis, like not necessarily logs, but
Okay.
official documents, I would say. And I can give you more specific information. I'm
Yeah.
sorry that I don't have that on hand, but
That's
that's
fine.
that's the gist of it.
Okay. All right. And then the only other question was, we found one of our pieces of equipment, a different company that sells it that we like better. It's less expensive, but is that an amendment we'd have to deal with, or can we just purchase that without, because it's less than what we paid for?
That would
don't
not be an
care?
amendment. If it's the same type of equipment, same piece of equipment, that wouldn't require an amendment. Really,
Okay.
equipment only grants, there should be no situations in which a contract would be officially amended, because the official contract amendment process involves USDA re-review of your project.
Okay.
And they're only re-reviewing projects in the cases of changing project scopes,
Okay.
which is not allowable under the equipment only grant. So any questions that you have related to changes and things that you're purchasing, it would be definitely best practice to reach out to us before you make any of those purchases if there's any sort of question about whether or not it's reimbursable under your contract.
Okay. Thank you so much, Grace.
Is there anything that you have to add to that, Chad?
Oh, just regarding like, for example,
You might be on mute. Yeah, you're on mute.
Hello. Yep, nope. For record retention there, we would like to follow something similar to how a way of thinking about it is if that information was meant as like you just jotting down notes or anything like that, just to help remind yourself about a certain task or anything, then that's not necessarily a public record. But if it's something there that's a note that's meant to be shared with somebody else, then yeah, that would be considered a public record. So following public record retention law, that would be considered like a note that's worth retaining. But all in all, when in doubt, save it is usually the best practice.
Thank you for that. Okay. I will get back to any other questions that were not answered in the chat. I think I just have one more quick slide and then we'll get into questions. Okay, so this is just kind of a theoretical coming soon sort of announcement. We are hoping to have a virtual grantee office hours, just a space for folks to come and join at the lunch hour or whatever for, you can pop in, you can stay for the hour for people to ask questions. Sometimes that's easier than asking questions over email or phone call. It's just another space to connect with us on anything that you may need answers or support on. So we're still trying to figure out exactly what that looks like and how often they would be, but they would be infrastructure grantees and equipment only grantees. And beyond just asking us questions, being able to ask each other questions and talk about what kind of work you're doing, if there's any sort of collaboration that can happen. We're really trying to support the communication between you all, because in past grant programs at DATCAP, that's one of the things that's come up consistently on progress reports, is that folks wish that they had an easier line of communication or access to other grantees in order to talk through things, ask advice, etc. So ideas for other resources that you may want or need, or ways to support you, they're always welcome. We really want this to be as robust and supported we don't want this to be simply just a transfer of funds. And so you can participate or not participate as much or as little as you'd like, but we're really here to support you. Me and Chad are hired by this, we're paid by this grant. I mean, this is our job. And so we look forward to having strong working relationships with you and getting to know you and your project. So never hesitate to reach out with anything that we can do for you or with you. Okay, now we've moved on to the questions portion. So a few people have raised their hands. It looks like Tina.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have a question. When we submitted the like quotes when we applied for the equipment only, those were just what it is, quotes. Our tribal policy is that if a contract for equipment is going to end up over $5,000 total, we have to go through the tribal process, which is getting 3 bids from different businesses or entities or individuals.
Okay.
So is that tribal policy gonna play first? Because I guess I was worried that with the quote that I submitted with the grant, I would have to stay with that one quote, but that's not how the tribe does it actually.
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. Again, we understand that these quotes were obtained and submitted a long time ago for a lot of you, and that things have inevitably changed. And so if your organization requires you to go through a certain process to find the best bid for the piece of equipment that you're hoping to purchase, that works for us so long as it's the same piece of equipment and you understand that you will be funded up to the amount in your contract for the piece of equipment. Anything beyond that amount will be for you to cover. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Sherry, do you have another question, or is your hand still up from the last one? Okay. Let me go through the chat then quick. The slides will be available. There's also a recording of the presentation in progress, because I know that there were a few folks that weren't able to make it. So we'll send you the link. It'll probably be posted to like a private YouTube channel. So you'll have access to this after the fact. And I can also send out the slides as well in an email. The semi-annual progress report is required. We require 3 reports from you every 6 months starting June 15th, 2025. So that was that schedule that was on one of the slides. That's when those reports are due. The audit is only required if an entity receives over $750,000 in federal funding. That's correct. So you're all receiving less than $100,000, which is key because it means that you don't have to be audited or do something with the CPA. So that's good news for you. I think we spoke to the record retention question, and then we'll go to Deanna's question. If you spend less on one piece of equipment, are we able to use the remaining funds on another piece of equipment if the price on the second has increased? And that would be a yes, Chad, right?
Uh,
Go ahead.
let us know your thoughts there so we can review it. We want to make sure that everything's following the scope of the grant there. So when in doubt and you find like another piece there that
I think she's asking if.
Grace, you're muted.
No.
Go ahead, Deanna, you can, go
Okay,
ahead
yeah, I
and
thought I'd just
tell us
chime
what
in.
you're thinking.
So kind of two thoughts with that question. One is
Mhm.
if one piece of equipment, the price has happened to have gone down, but another has
Mhm.
increased, are we able to kind of offset but still stay within, obviously staying within the total funds of our project?
Yes.
And then the second thought was if you do save money on something, maybe you're able to get it on sale or whatever, are we able to request an additional piece of equipment as long as we're staying within the scope of our project?
So
If we have
that is
like
where we
extra
would have
funds
to
left.
That's where we would have to review, and most
Okay.
likely the answer is no, just because of how competitive this grant process was. Um, we're hoping to have some funds remaining for a potential second round of equipment only grants. That's not a guarantee. We're seeing how things shake out, but because grants or applications were reviewed by an external review committee, DACAP, and then AMS, and it was a very rigorous process. Introducing new pieces of equipment that haven't gone through that review process would kind of degrade the integrity of the process. So it definitely don't hesitate to reach out with questions about that if there's a specific case that you find yourself in, and we'd be more
Sure.
than happy to advise, but that's kind of the general philosophy
Okay.
that we're going with.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. Nick, go ahead.
Hello, I'm wondering about just the kind of movement of money. So when we purchase an equipment, does that money have to come from like the primary contact bank account associated with the business that applied? Because we're a group of producers, so we have like multiple people interacting with what's going on. So yeah, I'm wondering, can anyone purchase it? And then I'm assuming the money's gonna have to come back to that bank account that was submitted with the grant. Is that correct?
Yes, and so I can thank Sherry for this because her question prompted me to ask our finance department about it. Anyone can purchase the piece of equipment, and then the transfer of funds and the receipt would need to be submitted by someone who we recognize, so you or someone else from a Half Moon Farm email address, and then the reimbursement would take place to whoever the primary contact is, whoever was set up in our payment system as the supplier. And then you would be responsible for figuring the rest out.
Got it. Thank you.
Mhm. Go ahead, Tina. I think you're on
Yep.
mute.
I'm here. What if, let's say, one of our pieces of equipment, we're gonna buy 4 pieces of it. That's what was
Mhm.
approved. Let's say we do the bids and they come in lower than what we thought, and everything else is on budget except this one item. And let's say there's enough left over to buy a 5th piece of the exact same equipment. Is that allowable?
That's a good question, and something again that we would have to review and just kind of see how things are shaking out. We couldn't. I wouldn't be able to say yes or no to that situation right now. I would say reach out to us and we can discuss it. Sorry that it's not a concrete answer at this time. We're just sort of trying to build the
Okay.
ship as we're sailing it.
Thank you.
Okay, Michael said a manufacturer has developed a better piece of equipment that suits our situation better and is less expensive, but it does the same job. So it's a different piece of equipment, but achieves the same goal and fits our space better. Yes, that would be okay. I would recommend that you send information to us before you make that purchase so that we can ensure that it's okay. But that type of situation, there shouldn't be a problem with that. Orphe?
Yep, sorry. How are you? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. I just a quick question. maybe a weird question, but do we have to buy equipment from the USA, or we can buy equipment from another country or Europe or anywhere in the world?
You can buy pieces of equipment from elsewhere.
Thank you.
Mhm. Michael, did that answer your question? Okay, great. Is there anything that we can answer from anyone else? Yeah, Nell, go ahead.
So I'm more looking just for some, in terms of like, maybe like future relationships. Is there a path you'd take towards financing, like securing financing, for example? Like, is it best for the USDA if we work with one of those people? Or like, let's say we have, you know, a family member or acquaintance who is willing to like help finance it. Do you prefer it to be through an institution? What's best practices?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Chad or Chris, but how you purchase the piece of equipment, as long as it's legal, is up to you. And then you just have to show us how you paid for it. So if someone is transferring, if a family member, for example, is transferring you funds to purchase the piece of equipment, then all you would have to do is just show us that the equipment was purchased. We don't have to know where the money came from to purchase it. And then we would reimburse you, and then you would work that out with whatever situation you were in. Yeah. Anything else to add there?
Nope, all good.
Okay. Orphe, go ahead.
Yes, sorry, Grace. One last question. Just wondering, it's maybe too specific to our case, but let's say we requested two pieces of equipment through the grant. And again, it's been like 8 months. If one piece of equipment got extremely expensive and pretty much covers the entire amount of the grant, can we just buy one out of the two, or it has to be the two pieces of equipment, requested through the grant?
I think that would be okay.
Yeah, we'd have to review.
Again, yeah.
Yeah, sure, that's
the more
fine. Yeah, for
information
sure.
that you can send us, the better
Sure.
it is for you, because
No, you're right.
then it's skin off our back and not yours.
I get it.
But
You're right. Sorry.
I can't foresee a problem with that right now.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Michael's asking if there are leftover funds toward the end of the grant period. How is that handled? They would just be kept with DACCAP, and hopefully dispersed in a future equipment only round. Go ahead, Sherry.
I just want to clarify again the group issue. So you're saying that another person can purchase it, but the reimbursement will come to the grantee.
Mm-hmm.
But so what we would still have to do the same process, like we would have to get a copy of their bank statement, best practice of their bank statement of the funds going out and the invoice and everything, but it could be in their name.
Yes.
But we would get the reimbursement and then pay them back.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Whoever was set up in our system, whoever Chris and Chad set up in our system via the W-9 and the new supplier form, that is the only entity that will be receiving these funds. And then if you owe someone else, then you would just handle that. But as long as you have the proof of that the equipment has already been purchased, and then an invoice or a receipt or something tying the price of the equipment to the piece of equipment, and everything is connected, and we're able to understand what happened, that this purchase was made, then it's reimbursable to you.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Go ahead, Chad.
Best practices is include like some notes or pieces in there saying what your intentions were. Like if somebody else purchased it, just letting us know what's going on there is the best way to process that reimbursement.
Okay. That's helpful. So we need to have some notes when we send it in, that this person is a part of our group. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Nell, did you have another question? No, okay. Has anyone's question not been addressed in the chat? I don't think so, but send a reminder if not. Okay, I think that does it then. You have our contact information. Reach out if you have any questions or any doubts, or there's any sort of situation that arises, and we will do our
I'm not
best
doing
to
something really simple, like buying
inform you. But
We have
thank you all again for taking the time to be here. We really appreciate your time and all of the time that you've put into this process. So thanks for working with us and being patient. And we're really excited that you get to use some money for good purposes.
I have
Oh,
one
it
more
looks like
question.
Nell has a question here.
Sorry.
Mm.
Okay,
Nell, do you still have a question?
I do, yes.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask a question about, since we're nearing the end of the year, like let's say we were to make the purchase in
Yeah,
24, but then we receive reimbursement in 25. Are we taxed on that income? Should we try and get it all in one calendar year? Like, would you not suggest purchasing something on December 1st, knowing that, 25th, everything kind of shuts down?
It's a good question, but it's unfortunately not a question for us. That would be
Okay.
a question for your tax people.
Okay, because I want to say that could mess up someone's books. If they get like
Sherry's shaking her head. It seems like
Yeah, my
seems like
accountant,
go ahead.
My accountant did tell me that it's much better to have it all, because otherwise it'll look like you had that profit, and you'll have to, you're right. So if you do it all in
Yes.
1 year, so we're waiting until January 1st.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, that's it.
Okay, sounds good. Have a great day, everyone. And yeah, thanks again. Okay, do I need to end the recording?